I was watching a documentary and this woman was starting I don't know what the child was very young, like I would say less than 5, and she was already going to doctor's visits, I guess like to get ready for whatever the next step of intervention was. And I watched this years ago. This is before I was a parent. And initially I was so emotional and was like, what a good mom to accept her child no matter what. Like, that's kind of where they want to get you, right? Is with the heartstrings. And you're like, she's just, because hear all these horrible stories about, there's a gay kid and his parents abuse him or don't accept him or kick him out of the house. And you're like, terrible parents, what terrible parents. So then you see this other example and they're switching their kid's gender and you're like, well, what a great parent because they're just accepting the child. They're just like taking the child for whatever it's saying and and just letting them be unique in their own right. And we're forgetting like there still needs to be, like you said, safeguards, right? So there's I don't know, it's a fine line. I feel like a lot of this is so nuanced. You don't ever want to shut a kid down, but I guess to give my own example, my kid's 3 and he still doesn't really understand the difference between boys and girls. Like he's like still kind of getting there, but he calls everyone he. Like that's just what the pronoun that he likes to call everyone. And I'm like, I'm just waiting for the day that he offends somebody by doing that. I'm like, he's 3, you can't take offense. But he doesn't even understand that concept. So now I'm looking back at that documentary and I'm like, whoa, that 3-year-old has no idea what they're saying, right? And these parents are being a little bit negligent. So he was feeling around his body the other day and he was like really pushing at his chest, like his sternum right here. And he's like, why is that so hard? And I was like, oh, there's bones under there. And then he starts playing with his fingers and he's like, why are these so hard? I'm like, there's bones in there. And I was trying to explain the concept of what a bone does functionally. And he's like, oh, I don't like that. And then he had a tantrum and kept telling me to take them out. Like he was so uncomfortable with the idea of something being in his body that he at that time felt was foreign. And obviously this is like an extreme example, but it does showcase that he obviously in that moment had no idea what was good for him because like you will die if you don't have bones in your body. And it showed that like as you become a little bit more online as a child, like you're just getting more body awareness. Like there's so much nuance to that, to development, and a lot of it's going to be strange, especially around puberty. And just because it's uncomfortable or you might not feel at ease, like it's the parent's job to help kind of guide you into like a loving and appreciating your body. And it's not to say that trans people don't exist. I'm very well that they are. And I think adults should be able to do what they want to do with their body and live the life that they want to live, so long as they're not imposing on other people. We're talking about kids. So I think it's your job to make them lean into discomfort, appreciate their body. And then I do wonder like how much like are there alternatives to medical intervention when it comes to these kids, whether they actually have dysphoria or whether it's something else? Because a lot of the information I've been reading was suggesting that there is kind of this relationship with autism and the numbers that we're seeing. So again, it's like how much of are there other alternatives? Or are we like, no, we just have to affirm, and the only right answer is that the child knows best?
Hmm. I mean, your story there about your son's throwing up some interesting observations. And, we have to think about human nature in all of this. We know that human beings have a tendency to be very self critical, particularly of their outward appearance. A lot of us, I'm sure there probably isn't a person alive who wouldn't, if they had an opportunity, change some aspect of their body that they feel self conscious about. And then, as your son was kind of intimating, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about what's going on inside our bodies. And I think if we think about it too much, any of us might squirm a little bit if we really think about what's happening at any given moment. And, particularly in puberty, I mean, your body is literally changing before your very eyes. You don't quite understand the changes. Some of them might be uncomfortable. You never asked for the changes to take place. So this is, it can be a distressing time for any child. The problem is now the message we're giving to children is, well, if you don't like it, you can change it or you can pause it. Whereas actually, it should be working towards acceptance. I mean, so much of therapy and counselling is around acceptance. Um, In terms of what can be offered as an alternative to medicalizing children, well, therapy is very effective because gender dysphoria, is a mental health condition. I always come back to that point again. And so we should treat it, with open explorative therapy as we would for anything else. But actually, just time, it's kind of fallen out of favor a bit, but the old phrase used to be watchful waiting. That's what they used to recommend to parents. Just kind of bide your time and see how it goes, because the statistics show that the vast majority of children with gender dysphoria will settle into their bodies with time. So that's the decision we've got to make here. You either allow children the time, and likelihood is they'll settle into themselves, or you start them down a slippery slope towards medicalization before they've even hit puberty.